Farms have been part of our landscapes for centuries, but the way they support us has adapted as the world around has changed. Sometimes farming families are reacting to national trends, sometimes to factors very special to our area. Now we can find out more through the memories of farmers whose lives are close to the land. Their words help us to understand more about how farms have developed, from feeding medieval monasteries to supporting the mines and protecting wildlife. The farmers we're about to meet have their roots here, their land based in a triangle which runs inland from the coast between the Tyne and the Tees. It's an area with a remarkable geological heritage which shapes all our lives here, including the lives of our farmers. The shallow soils of this limestone escarpment lend themselves to agriculture. Large fields, often with low hawthorn hedgerows and few trees, are a familiar sight. But the arrival of the mines in the 19th century had an impact on farming. Some became known as colliery farms, adapting their crops to supply what was needed by the pits. David Cowton tells us what they grew and sold.
But essentially the farm was here just to provide the feed for the pit ponies and the straw for the stopping the wagons, for holes in the wagons to stop the coal from falling out. Instead of repairing the wagon properly, they would just shove a slice of straw in there, because obviously it can go through the whole process, and it didn't matter if it was still in the coal because it would burn.
David married into farming. His new wife was the fourth generation to farm that area. His father-in-law, Richard Anderson, lived at the same farm for more than 60 years. The family wanted to save the memories of the colliery farming and recorded this interview with Richard in the 1980s in his final years. Here he describes threshing, beating cereal crops to release the edible grain.
I used to get up about 5:30, 6 o'clock, go and take the dampers off the engine, open the dampers, stir the fire up, and a few minutes it would start to sing away like an overgrown kettle, and then by 7 o'clock the driver would arrive, and by then I had a head of steam and it was practically all ready for him. He would oil round, then I'd go and set the machine up beside the stack that was going to thresh, put the belt on, then at 8 o'clock that was starting time. We had extra hands coming, 2 or 3 extra women to carry straw, extra men to fork corn off the stack onto the machine, others to bag the corn up, lead it away into the granary, and it was a gang of 4, 10, 12 extra people involved in all that.
Ron works at a nearby farm. He might be a more recent generation of farm worker, but he too has strong memories of the annual threshing.
We used to work on there during harvest time. We would go up to the farm when the mobile thresher would come along, and we'd be there helping when they were threshing the arable, the wheat and barley and such like, with the mobile threshers. We used to kill the rats as they ran out of the stacks of straw with a lump of wood. Yeah, that's what the young kids did, and you were on your school holidays at the time.
The number of people working on farms now is far lower than when Ron began work, despite the fact that the amount of land used for farming has remained pretty constant over the last century. Machines have replaced people. Richard remembers how different it was 60 years ago. Whatever the weather, all year round there was always a backlog of jobs which needed men, women and even children available to tackle.
Other winter jobs, trimming hedges, cleaning drains out. You'd find probably some place where water was come to the surface. Generally jobs like that, heavy repair work, repair fences, post and rail fences they would repair. The women used to be out in the fields as well, picking stones off the fields that had to be cut with a grass cutter. Wet days, they're upstairs in the granary, mending sacks to hold corn for threshing days. All the sacks had to be rain-proof, no leaks in them. That kept them going all most of the time.
Railways were a vital transport route in those days. This area saw the birth of the railways, thanks to coal, and there were various lines including the Durham Coast Railway. The railways were originally constructed to transport coal from the mines, but were valuable for local farmers who were always ready to seize opportunities when goods arrived, often with little or no warning.
A lot of stuff to the farm came in on railway wagons. Hassel had a depot, and it was a junction, as I understand it, between two different railway companies, so they could come from anywhere, and they would get a message to say that the cattle cake was in, and that we have records of 5 tons of cattle cake being delivered. So they'd have to go with a horse and cart, pick it up from the railway goods yard, and bring it back home. And also sheep were. I remember my father-in-law telling me that he bought sheep up at Scott's Gap in Northumberland, and they'd arrive the next day in a wagon at Hassel.
Life on the farm required many skills from the workers. You had to be ready to cope with whatever was needed, everything from managing big teams to mucking in and doing all the tasks yourself. If a cow needs milking or a crop needs harvesting, it won't wait.
Your father would be on the morning, he'd milk the cow too, and then have the work dished out of who what to do, what would get our orders, out with horses, who was going ploughing, or some carting to do, or some turnips to get into the shed, or potatoes, something like that. And then he would be jobbing about the farm most days after that, dealing with any callers, travellers used to come, and stuff arriving and so forth. He was doing that. Unless such as hay time and harvest time, where he was out in the field working with us.
Every member of the family was expected to lend a hand.
Well, as a child, we always had what we called potato picking week, when we used to go with our parents, our mothers in the main, because our father was working down the coal mine, and we'd go on the land. I mean, the farm, I could see the farm out of the house window, of course, because we were right next to it.
Those views for the farm workers have changed dramatically in their lifetimes. The horse was a crucial ally, shouldering the heavy work and offering the chance for youngsters to perch precariously on the equipment being dragged over the fields. But mechanisation, everything from the tractor to the milking machine, gradually replaced labourers. Now the farmer had to borrow to make the financial investment needed in large-scale, highly productive machinery.
I've gone from horse and cart days, you see, no machinery, or very, very little, and it was all handwork. There was only the bind and the grass cutter, and a cutter that you could ride on. And everything else, you walk plough, you walk behind the horses, harrows, you walk behind, and all that, and everything was done by hand. Then we got the tractor, where we got to go and buy, you get what kids buying the tractor, we got to buy a pleasant tractor plough, and we bought a set of discs, and bigger harrows.
The harrow, which broke up the clods of earth, was one of many agricultural changes which increased productivity, making more food for us all, but often at the cost of damaging wildlife. Intensification and change in practices, in particular the move from pasture to arable crops, has resulted in larger fields, the loss of hedges and trees, and damage to grassland and wetlands. But farmers are now increasingly involved in helping restore suitable habitats for wildlife. Living and working so close to nature, they are especially able to make a difference, as Ron describes.
On the other side of the railway line, to the north of here, up towards Hawthorne Dean, we have one of the most beautiful flower meadows in East Durham. What I do, around about August, September, as late as possible, weather permitting, when the flowers are going into seed, I go over there with a brush, a sweeper, on the back of a quad, and I sweep through the grasses, collecting wildflower seed best as I can. And then bring it off that meadow take it onto other land on the cliff tops and spread it on them fields there. And hopefully where the cattle have grazed and where there's disturbed grassland, hopefully that will germinate on there.
There is much more still to be done. Field boundaries, particularly older hedgerows, need conservation work, and more planting of copses and hedges is needed. Broader, uncultivated areas along the edges of fields would benefit both the landscape and wildlife. Pesticides can still be harmful. But nevertheless, there's a lot to thank the farmers for. David has seen real progress in what is summarised by the phrase biodiversity.
We now have partridges back on the farm. They were missing for quite a few years. A wide variety of wildlife which has come back. We've now got a letter spotted woodpecker which has just turned up this last year. We have bats and a good population of mammals, voles, field mice, this sort of thing.
Even though the modern farmer can seem separated from the countryside, cocooned in a noisy tractor cab, the close links are still there.
When I'm cutting grass, I'm watching all the time. The least movement, you see it. And I'll stop, because 9 times out of 10, it's either a family of pheasant or a family of partridge. I'll get out of the tractor, I'll shoo them off where they are, across to the swaths of grass which I've already cut, and I'll carry on. Or if there might be a possibility that there is a pheasant or a partridge still nesting, and it's got eggs and young in the nest, you know where it is because you're watching them. And you just drive around them, don't cut that grass, leave it there for them, and then carry on.
So now the farmers are a vital part of the restoration of our region. The former mining areas are being redeveloped, and that includes improvements in habitats to create wildlife corridors between different areas that were previously isolated. The limestone landscape is home to some rare species which love these conditions, and now they are being helped to increase in numbers thanks to their allies, the farmers.